Hi everyone, I'm Jenna Jones from Blackwood Comprehensive School. I'm the subject leader for English. I've popped my details on there. If anybody wants to chat all things TWR at any time, I'd love to chew your ear off about it. I think one of the things for me that really came out of this is how something that seems quite small can have such a huge impact. So my research question was how can embedding sentence level TWR strategies improve pupils' control of their writing? So a little bit about us at Blackwood. So we are located in Caerphilly, County Borough. We're 11 to 16 English medium school. Again, this context was the most up to date at the time, but it has changed slightly since. So at the time the case study was produced, we were on 986 pupils on roll. We do have quite a high percentage of EFSM learners, just over 25%, which is above the national average. We do also have quite a high percentage of ALN learners as well, nearly 21%, but we do have a really small number of EAL pupils. Okay, so when kind of thinking about the rationale for taking part in the actual training and the research, something for us was kind of considering our context and where we were specifically with our writing. So at the end of last year, when reporting our end of Key Stage 3 data, 83% of our pupils achieved a level 5 in writing, which kind of in comparison to our reading and oracy, we don't tend to see as many people securing the 5 in writing, which, has been a priority for us for the last few years now, and it continues to be something that we're looking to improve. When considering the exam data, and when we were analysing that last year, something that was kind of a bit of a stark realisation for us was the fact that pupils in our school, within the writing section of the English language exam, they actually underperform in comparison to the rest of Wales. So when thinking about written accuracy, the average mark for Wales is 9.4. However, our pupils were achieving an average of 6.6, which there's quite a big discrepancy there between what our pupils or how they were performing and the rest of Wales. In addition to that, within our school development plan, the first priority is to ensure pupil progress in literacy development with a specific focus on EFSM pupils. We know from, data and kind of anecdotal evidence that our EFSM pupils don't perform as well as their counterparts. So that was one of the reasons we thought that this may be something really useful in improving writing. In addition to that, we were inspected last May. And although our ESTIN inspection and our ESTIN report was overwhelmingly positive, I suppose you always look for, not a negative as such, but you always look for the thing that you need to work on. And something that they did mention was that we have a minority of pupils who struggle to write with control. And that really kind of was the driving force behind the research question. In addition to that, some of my own kinds of reading. So a colleague actually recommended Robin Hardman's book. I think it's called The Writing Game. And within that, he spoke about, the more frequently pupils write, the greater chance that they will make progress. And I think sometimes the preparation that goes into writing, it can feel quite onerous, that perhaps we, put more reading tasks in or more oracy tasks in, but actually the evidence suggests that the more they do it, the better they become. And then also within Quigley's Closing the Writing Gap, he mentions that the messy, complex, rich and rewarding act of writing can and should be at the heart of best practice in the classroom. So in addition to that, I think something that kind of further cemented, the reason to take part in the project was the kind of synergy between Quigley's recommendations for closing the writing gap, but also the TWR principles. So one of his steps was that teachers needed to concentrate on crafting great sentences with pupils. And within the TWR, the second principle was around this idea that sentences are the building blocks for all writing. So I think for me, it kind of showed that there's obviously lots of evidence out there that's saying the same thing. So that was kind of the rationale behind it. And then from that point, I started thinking about who the strategies would have the biggest impact on in terms of my own classes. So I actually have a small literacy intervention class. They're a C class, a literacy catch-up group. And they're small groups. There's only 16 of them. And I think that they were the most obvious group to do it with. We're talking about, NRT data, NRT scores of between 70 and 90. They really needed something concrete to kind of latch onto to really improve their writing, but then consequently their reading comprehension as well. So within that small class, I decided to kind of focus on my EFSM pupils. There were 6 of them in there, 4 boys and 2 girls. And right at the very beginning, before we introduced the Writing Revolution strategies, they completed a baseline assessment, it was nothing new. It was a writing task that they were completing within the topic at the time, but that just became kind of my evidence base really to kind of, I suppose, cling on to, and then think about, right, okay, what do I need to focus on with them. So these are just some snippets of the baseline assessment. Apologies if you can't quite read them all. Pupil A then, he's probably the middle ability out of the group of learners. You can see though that in his writing there, you've got comma splicing errors, you've got capital letter errors, there's issues there with sentence construction. Likewise then, pupil B, who I would say is the weakest pupil within the research group. There are issues there with capital letters, run-on sentences, and again, sentence construction. And then pupil C, although he is probably the strongest writer out of the 3, there are still issues there with sentence construction. So that kind of formed the basis. And then I suppose enabled me then to decide which strategies I felt would be most effective with the class. And I think something that kind of came out of the training was the idea that sentence level writing shouldn't be dismissed as something that's too basic for older pupils. I think, we've spoken about, you've got learners in year 4 looking at it, but also likewise in year 10. I don't think unless they're being reminded and explicitly taught what makes a sentence every single day, they don't have the knowledge and understanding of that. It is definitely something that has to be explicitly taught. So it was that kind of then that led me to focusing on how the TWR strategies could improve the control of their writing. So we introduced the strategies, fragments and sentences, scrambled sentences, using conjunctions to extend sentences, and also adding appositives. So I think strategies 1 to 3 have been mentioned already. With regards to adding appositives, that was centered around adding more information within a sentence about a noun. And it's a really easy way for them to write a complex sentence. So one of the requirements for us is to kind of make sure that they've got a variety of sentence structures that they're able to use within their writing. So yeah, it was just a kind of tick exercise, really. It's a really straightforward, accessible way for them to be able to write a complex sentence. So you can see some kind of images of slides there. I predominantly introduce them as do now / starter activities. and they had one of the strategies virtually every lesson. And it was quite nice actually, because they said, oh, we're doing this again to start with, but by the end of it they were like, oh, I'm good at these now. So you could kind of see the confidence building as they became familiar with the strategies, which was great. So following the explicit teaching of those, they did another writing task. It was about 3 months later. So you've got the same pupils here now. So again, I'm not professing that these are perfect at all, but they are a huge improvement on the initial baseline assessment. So you can see there every single day feels the same because all of the soldiers, including me, are always woken up exactly one hour before dawn. Part of our daily routine is guarding for any horrific surprise attacks from no man's land. So you can see there's control, which was, that was the aim. I wanted them to be in control of their writing. You can see there that, pupil A's sentences, he's got his subject and his predicate. He's got his embedded clause in there. He's demarcating his sentences. So again, that's a huge improvement. Pupil B, she again was, as I mentioned, she's the weaker of the subgroup, but actually even this is a huge improvement. And I think, she really struggles with spelling. So take the spelling out of it. Actually, we've got a massive improvement here in terms of sentence construction. They did have sentence starters and things to get them going, but their ideas were very much their own. And this subject knowledge came from, we were reading Private Peaceful with them. We were talking about what life was like in the trenches. So it does really go hand in hand. They were able to showcase their reading comprehension and their understanding through this writing task. And then, yeah, you can see, people see there, he's extending his sentence, using the conjunction so. This is hugely improved in comparison to the baseline assessment. But we didn't just stop there. We kept going, and this is their most recent one. So we've actually changed topics now. We've been looking at the sea. And these are just some snippets from their letters to SeaWorld. So again, they had sentence starters and things, but these are very much their own ideas that were generated through, planning. So yeah, again, massive improvement. They're using appositives. So I think in there someone mentions the trainer Ken Peters. You've got subordinate clauses. They're extended their sentences with conjunctions. So I think it just goes to show that once the strategies become habitual, you do then see them transferring from task to task. They don't just vanish, which is fantastic because you actually can see the impact of the work that you're doing with them. So in terms of an evaluation, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It was really, really informative, but the impact that it had on the learners was just incredible, really. So I think because it was so structured, and I think the thing that's actually quite successful about it is it's very formulaic. And I think our pupils love that, like in maths, they always say, oh, there's a right answer and there's a wrong answer. But in English, how do you know? Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. So teaching them strategies that are quite formulaic did have a huge impact on their kind of ability to go with it. So yeah, that was hugely successful. It did become, habitual because they're doing it all the time, and there's lots of repetition in there. The fact that we continued the strategies while studying the novel meant that you had this really nice kind of interdisciplinary connection. So it wasn't just something that was isolated to the topic on conflict. They were doing it within our reading lessons. They've continued then in our new topic on the sea. We've been reading another book, Between Sea and Sky. And they're noticing things now. So they'll say things like, oh, miss, there's an appositive there. They never would have noticed that before. So they're actually noticing it in other pieces of writing as well. And yeah, overall, it's been really, really successful. So in terms of kind of what's next for us, I said what's next. but some of these things I've already done. So, for example, the inset that I've mentioned there, I've presented the sentence level strategies to the whole school. We did that on an inset day. It was really successful because I kind of put them in the shoes of a learner and was asking them questions like, what makes a sentence a sentence? And it did get everybody really thinking. So we went right back to basics as staff. And it's been great now because I'm having lots of things sent to me, examples of how they've been used across the curriculum. Um, One of my year eights came in and said, "Oh, we've just done this in French." And I was like, "Yes, great, that's what we want." So it's they're familiar with it now. It's also been kind of disseminated across the department. All of our kind of schemes of learning have the strategies embedded as, you know, starters or plenaries. We're in the process of reviewing our Year 9 curriculum just to ensure it's in line with the curriculum for Wales. And these strategies have been embedded within those as well. Probably the most exciting part has been the transition project that we've done with Cluster this year. So I went out to work with our Year 6 teachers on these strategies. They've then delivered those within our transition project to the Year 6 classes. And they have then produced a diary entry for us, imagining that they're a refugee. And what I was able to do then is I was able to send a member of the department out to every primary school. They delivered a lesson picking up these strategies, and it was just great because the children were already familiar with them. So they could spot them in writing, they could talk about them. The terminology that they're using is what we would like them to be using when they get to us. So that's been really successful. And then in terms of kind of next plans, so I've been doing a little bit of work with our school improvement partner, which is St. Joseph's High School in Newport. And something that we're looking at doing is for me to deliver the inset to their school. So that's kind of the next plan with it. But yeah, as I said, I've absolutely loved it. The impact that it's had on the children is incredible. And I definitely recommend it for anybody that is thinking about it for next year. And yeah, that's me.